guys sounded awesome. You know, there are days that are just other days, but today seems like a little different one, doesn't it? Amen. So, Amy Calder was going to be sharing the message today, but they couldn't be here. They're out of town, and so you'll get to hear her another day. But I was looking forward to hearing her speak. But God has His way of working out things, doesn't He? Amen. And one of the things that we can most benefit from is to stop fighting everything and to just allow things to play out and trust God.
Amen. Amen.
And the Apostle Paul, he had tried to do everything so diligently in the way that he thought he was supposed to be doing it, and he was a frustrated man. And when he wrote the words that I'm going to share here before we go back into picking up our story in Genesis, I want you to think about a guy that was planning to go out and persecute, arrest, and kill those that are like you. And he encountered Christ, and all of the things that he had encountered before didn't matter anymore, and all of a sudden he experienced love. And he experienced it not just that it was presented to him and that it showered over him, but he got to know what it was like to then also love rather than to hate. That came into my mind as Brian was praying about, Lord, we desire to set aside all prejudice and all things that we see that would lead us towards thinking less of another person, right? And we all need that.
Amen.
Every single one of us need that in our lives. At least once a day. Man, you're doing better than me. And so he's talking about the law in Romans chapter 12, and it came to my mind because you guys were sharing this earlier in the week, Romans 12, so it's been kind of on my mind as I've been going through the words that were written there. And he says this is summed up. And so he's actually quoting the things that Jesus taught. And so it says here, love your neighbor as yourself. The end of verse 9. Love does no harm to its neighbor. Love does no harm to its neighbor. Who is your neighbor?
Everybody.
Everybody is your neighbor. Imagine if that was the focus of the world today. And they said, love does no harm to its neighbor, therefore I will not harm another person. In any way.
No,
Yeah.
I thank you for saying that, because I didn't know, I think anal kind of, and we had a really good neighbor, and then I think of Mexico, it kind of, that's just honestly how I think. I'm very, very protective.
So I had a neighbor in our old neighborhood where the kids were playing football in the little tiny yards. Our yards were very small, and so you really couldn't play football in them because they were, maybe 20 feet by 40 feet or something like that. And they'd play teams and play football in a 20 by 40 foot area, and the ball would go outside of that yard. This lady had little gnomes in her yard. She was so particular, she would vacuum her yard. I'm not joking, she would vacuum it. And if something, even maybe a leaf on one of the plants got moved, somehow she knew. These kids, they're 10, 12 years old, they're playing football, and the ball goes down the street, and it knocks over a gnome. in her yard, a little gnome like this. She called the police. We had this beautiful tree, and I planted it specifically so that the leaves, because the southwest wind would come, and it would also shade the backyard of the house. And this tree, man, it grew up like crazy. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And I planted it there so that when the fall winds would blow, it would blow all the leaves into my yard. Well, she was afraid that the leaves might fall on her side of the fence, and very aggressively desired that we cut the tree down. So we did. It gave me an excuse to go buy a chainsaw because I didn't have one.
Truth comes out.
Yeah.
Honesty's good, I think.
The funny thing is that year when the leaves all came down, she hired landscapers, and her landscapers would blow all the leaves from her house into our yard. We'd laugh about it because we were going, well, that's really ironic. That's funny right there. Right? The neighbor on the other side had those little tiny wind chimes, you know, the ones that just make a little sound, almost a creepy sound, but it's kind of a cool sound, depends on your frame of mind. You know, like at the beginning of Twister, you know, when the wind is starting to move and they have all the chimes going in that movie, right? I love going out there and I hear the neighbor's wind chime. It was pretty cool. That was unacceptable to this neighbor.
Wow.
Our neighbor on the other side, they were amazing because we had, you know, I mean, they didn't care if something flew into our yard and we didn't care if vice versa. They weren't worried about that. In fact, when we first moved there, we came home one day from doing something in town and we didn't lock our door. In fact, one time we went away on vacation and forgot the garage door open in this neighborhood. And we came back and everything was fine.
No way. That doesn't happen.
Well, this day we came home and we're going in. I think we'd gone to get some groceries or something and we were putting stuff away. And here comes the neighbor boy. He's in our pantry. He's in there hiding, eating like Twinkies or something. So he had let himself into the house and he was inside our pantry with the door closed. And we loved that. That was fun. And he was a little guy. I mean, he was just a little dude. Yeah. So much fun. Did I have some thoughts about my neighbor with the nose? Were my thoughts justified? No. Not according to this. To love my neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of all law. So now as we pick up this story, and we spend a few minutes in the story of Lot, and we're going to just go into the very beginning of that story in a very difficult situation. Making the lady with the gnomes. I got to tell you one more part of that story.
Yeah. Talk to us.
She got married, and they loved each other, but they couldn't live in the same house. He got an apartment in Salem. And so he would drive out there, and they had hours that they spent their married life together. Because she couldn't stand to have him around, and he didn't like being in the environment where he was not enjoying his presence. It was an interesting arrangement. But they would defend each other, right? We can have neighbors that are interesting. Right? They can be very interesting, and it doesn't mean that, you know, we can spend our time upset. But we can find ways to laugh and enjoy it, and find ways to
Really giggling.
make a difference, right?
Choice.
It is choice. Right. Even when your neighbor is calling the police on you because the football knocked over a no.
We call the cops worse.
That's pretty significant infraction. Genesis chapter 19. The two angels, so Abraham had just had his conversation with the messengers from heaven, right? God. In verse 19, or chapter 19, verse 1, the two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them, and he bowed down with his face to the ground. Okay, so Sodom was a place that was so bad that Abraham had just had this conversation with God about whether if one person was there, would he save? You think about that, we think about Salem, and you can think about some things where all of you have experienced stuff that would not be of the right spirit. And yet this place was so significantly wicked that there was a conversation, is there somebody there that is not participating? And he's the one that's at the gate greeting. He's the greeting committee. And he immediately shows respect to the strangers because obviously they did not fit the description of those who came in and out of the city. And he shows concern for them as the story goes on. Verse 2, my lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning. I'm convinced that Lot knew that the people entering in were going to potentially encounter things they were not accustomed to encountering, and he wanted them to be safe. He was going to offer them the hospitality of being able to get cleaned up, but I think he was very much concerned about their well-being. I'm convinced that love concerns itself more with the well-being of others rather than the well-being of ourselves.
Amen. Amen.
I mean, if we look at the object of that which was God, that God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, right? His only begotten Son, whom willingly set aside self for us, for all of creation. So if that is the model, we have an opportunity here to see such a change through your lives when you, instead of focusing upon what's wrong, focus on what's right. And I'm speaking to myself in this because I struggle with it. It's so easy to see what's wrong. What's wrong stands out.
Not around here.
He said that there's a murmur, a whole murmur out here.
Yeah.
Quit murmuring. Or go ahead, continue.
The things of the enemy demand attention.
Yeah.
Right?
You got bumped in the head. I can't catch analogies, and you don't got to tell America that they know it in 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they can catch that quick. We're quick.
So the story goes on. They answer him, "We will spend the night in the square, in the middle of the city." But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Lot had an inkling that something like this would probably occur. He knew the city that he was in. And he wanted to give them refuge. Ultimately, you know what the city of refuge is? It's Jesus Christ.
Amen.
It's the sign saying, lean on me.
Yeah. He is your refuge. If you remember in Hebrews chapter 4, it was written there, it says, "And they would not enter my rest." He said, "While it is still today, if you hear my voice, enter into my rest." The ultimate expression of what Sabbath is the rest that we find in Jesus Christ. Today, as we are there celebrating a bunch of baptisms. I don't even know how many. I know that someone said 18 people have asked to be baptized.
I thought it was 101.
That's 11 be okay too. Those of you that have already been baptized, as well as those who are being baptized, let today be that day where you either are entering into that rest of Jesus Christ, or that you are experiencing it all over again by watching others expressing that. So that whether we're in the middle of Sodom, whether we're in the middle of any particular place, a war zone, or maybe the worst case scenario, it's just you with yourself,
Bad love of mine.
can be the most dangerous.
Bad love
Of
of
course,
mine.
yeah.
You alone by yourself can be the most dangerous situation you'll ever enter into.
I'm going to do that to you though, too. I'm going to make you be by yourself.
Right.
I got a question.
Yeah.
On the baptism, I've been looking for my great grandma, my grandma, and a certain man to do. But the man was reading it when I was really aged, where I couldn't walk, see, or talk, or anything in my bed. He says, if you ever think of doing communion or getting baptized, make sure that you are right in the mind, body, and soul. And at that day, it's today. And my thing is, I couldn't find it in the Bible, but he read it to me, and mine clicked with me, and it's not analogy, it was direct. He said, it said, for injury or someone who influenced your mind to think different or be sick. I can't find it nowhere, and I've been delaying the baptism for a while, but I got my doctor, my mom, my case manager together, and they all agreed I'm off rehab now. Give it 4 weeks, I'll be okay. I'm almost there.
You know the time to get baptized? When you believe.
Okay, I know, but it says in the Bible too.
Yeah.
It says right in the Bible, with your belief, you should still be healthy in the mind. You mean?
God will heal you then.
I hear, you know what,
Yeah.
I actually, you're right. Every time I think a lot about that, I end up walking in front of the mission. It says, come as you are.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it does that.
Yeah,
It's
when we
crazy
see-
how God is like that.
When we see the baptisms in the Bible, when they believed, they were baptized.
Right, yes, sir. I knew you would, exactly, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So Lot was the expression of God's love. He was the physical refuge for those that he hadn't really discovered who they were yet. And he was entertaining messengers from heaven.
I was thinking mission, by the way.
Imagine if you came to your senses and you realized that the neighbor that you were expressing love to was God himself. I want to suggest to you that every time that you've expressed love to somebody and a refuge to somebody, you have done it to God.
Amen.
Because he says that in Matthew 25, it says that when you gave a cup of cold water, when you fed, when you clothed, when you did those things, you did it unto me.
Amen.
Right.
Hallelujah. Be a
would say-
beggar, it could be a beggar on the side of the road.
I would say, if you didn't take it last night, I probably would have given it to you this morning.
Yeah, right. I want to end today in Hebrews. I'm gonna go short today because I want to make sure we have plenty of time down there at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have plenty of time down there for fellowship and so forth. So, sorry, I forgot my Bible today, so I just picked up one of our Bibles today for speaking today. But in Hebrews chapter 13,
I got to work out.
there's a blessing here.
Yes,
A
sir.
eulogy, a speaking well of, a desire for good things for you. Have you noticed the peace that has come over a lot of people that you've been around?
Amen.
That a year ago were struggling with having peace? I see it here today. There's a lot of peace here in people's lives. And it's just the beginning. Yeah. What's that?
In mine, they were so indirect in general, that now the guy that I thought was like that is not like that. He's like this, like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And the direct is not direct at me in this one scenario. I like it because I catch what he's saying now.
Yeah.
It's direct. It's not analogy. It's direct.
Right?
So I appreciate that for him. I like that.
Yeah. Well, God's giving you the
It's like
ability.
peace for him and me.
Giving you the ability to discern
Right.
and
there you go.
understand.
There you go. Yeah. And I'm surprised. I look at him and I know he looks at me and I'm like, wow, it works. It works. It's working. It's crazy. Hopefully, only time will tell.
So, as I chatted about my neighbor, I can tell you wholeheartedly that if she was ever in danger, we would have helped her. If she had issues, we would help her. Even though she was something else. She would challenge you to the corner. Not unlike maybe the way I challenge somebody else. I might do that to somebody else. I may have no idea that I am grinding on them so incredibly. Because we see the world through our lenses.
Don't go somewhere and get bumped in the head and say, my doctor says that I have too many pockets. I look manic.
Hebrews 13.
I got 18 pockets.
Hebrews 13. And I love what Paul says here. He goes in verse 20. May the God of peace, who through the blood of the eternal covenant brought back from the dead our Lord Jesus. Okay, that's a mouthful right there. He's saying the one who has the power to overcome the second death, the death which is eternal separation from God, that the power that overcame that death, the only way that the wage of sin could be accomplished and be satisfied, the second death, that made that power be the peace in you. Nobody can take that from you. Nobody can destroy it. Nobody can disturb it. If you were walking into Sodom, if it was still there and it had perpetuated into its evil to whatever point that would look like today, that they probably would have self-destruct many times over. But it doesn't matter where you go, what the circumstance is, whether you're walking into a place like that, nothing can disturb your peace. Because that peace was given by the same power that raised Jesus from the dead.
Hallelujah.
The only way I don't experience it is when I set it aside.
The negative force will apply pain or cuts or get your fingers broken or a hole in your foot, and it looks like you have no peace. It's just, well, I got a little whatever. I mean, but the peace is there.
Yeah.
You sleep and you sleep good for 4 hours, 3 hours, or whatever. You really do sleep good. Whatever it is, 2 hours. But
So this week I was trying to get a little bit of work done on my fence. And the day we went and looked at our new building, I was getting ready to head to the new building, and we were touring it. We were going to have a board meeting regarding it and all of that. And as I was getting ready to walk out the door, one of those black and white hornets, you know the ones that actually shoot their stinger at you, like an arrow? And they don't actually have to land on you, they actually will shoot it at you. And then the stinger's got the little sack on it and it's pumping its stuff into you, right? So one of those came and nailed me in the neck, and my neck got giant. And I took Benadryl, and my throat was swelling up and stuff, and I was like, man, we gotta be at the church. And so I destroyed the kitchen trying to find a baking soda. And so I get it all over the place. I'm like mixing it in with water and stuff, and I shove it on that thing, and I can't see it because it's back here. And then I take this big bandage and I wrap it around my neck, and I head off to meet the church to go view the property. Right?
Gee.
That kind of thing can make you afraid of bees. Right? People have circumstances that cause them to have fear. That's only if we set aside the peace that God gave us. One of the funny things is I didn't know if anyone noticed or not, but as that baking soda dried, it was falling down my shirt and then out my pant leg, and I was leaving like right across along the floor, and I was like, man, what is going on? Oh, wow, this is baking soda. They use that to clean carpet and stuff. Did you notice, Ted? No. No, you didn't. Okay, good. Well, you noticed. My point in that is that this week I was out working on the fence, and I had to go over onto my neighbor's property, and he doesn't mind. He's a great guy. To do the clips on the fence, and I find myself in the middle of a yellow jacket's nest, and it's right there where the post is, where I need to clip the fence. And they're just going crazy around me and stuff. And I'm going, man, that's a loud sound. There must be a lot of bees around. I wasn't even paying attention. And when I decided to look, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of yellow jackets. And I go, well, before I noticed it, they didn't sting me. And now that I do notice it, what would change that? So let's just clip the fence on. God, that's a silly little thing. But you can have peace in everything.
Amen. That's right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, it matters in that there's love, and God cares about what's happened to us in the past, and He cares about all those things. But we are not bound by the past. We are not bound by those things. We're not bound by our fears. We're not bound by any of those bad experiences. We can have peace in spite of them. Because Christ is the refuge.
Amen.
And then you're free to love your neighbor regardless of fill in the blank. Right? I'm so glad I have a neighbor that doesn't call the police all the time on us. My son bought some tannerite. You guys know what tannerite is? No. Tannerite is what you make exploding targets with. You can buy it at hardware stores and stuff.
Don't tell people I hear that.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Anyway, It's legal.
He sent up something.
He bought it online, and I think he bought it on a little box that was supposed to be for like, you know, you mix the active agent in it so that, you know, it's ready to go, and so when a bullet hits it,
Again, the bus.
yeah. And so he's out in the middle of the field, right? And I think there's a little young lady here that was part of that could tell the story better. Back there, Aaron.
Sound control, sound travel.
I don't think they understood what a big boom that would make.
Sound travel.
Something about not being able to hear afterwards. And the neighbor running out of their house going, what the blah, 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 what was that?
Wow.
And their house is over a quarter of a mile from us.
Next time, tell me blow the whole box at once. Just kidding. Just a quarter of it.
Somehow we all live together, don't we?
Sure.
Yeah, somehow. So he goes on as we wrap up here. Verse 21, this is a really important one because I need you to take hold of this and let him do it for you, okay? Because he will. That's what you're talking about, brother. He's saying the rest of that sentence that the great shepherd of the sheep, the one that overcame the power of death, may he, verse 21, may he equip you with everything good for doing his will. And may he work in us what is pleasing to him through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen. You want me to read it again? Okay, there's an encore. I'll read both verses together. May the God of peace, who through the blood of the eternal covenant brought back from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, equip you with everything good for doing his will. And may he work in us what is pleasing to him through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
We'll just call that our prayer today. We'll just call that our prayer today. So, God bless you guys, and as you can see, there's a big yellow bus out there. So those of you that need a ride down to the beach, that's going to be the transportation. If you have belongings, you know, carts or bags or whatever, you're welcome to bring them in here. We're going to lock the doors inside, and you can pick them up when we're done. And by the way, this is a bus from an academy. And we talked about this last night. Usually when people see an academy, they think of teenagers. So just remember, they might be surprised and might stare a little bit when you're going by and they see that it's not teenagers.